5,000 years ago, in a forest called Naimisharanya, something happened that would change the course of human understanding forever. A group of sages, the most brilliant minds of their era, gathered together, not for war, not for politics, not for wealth. They gathered for one reason: to ask the most important question a human being can ask. And the answer they received is what you're about to hear. This is the Shrimad Bhagavatam. The Shrimad Bhagavatam is one of the most important texts ever written, 18,000 verses, 12 cantos. It covers everything from the creation of the universe to the prophecies about our current age, from the nature of God to the mechanics of death, from cosmic wars between gods and demons to intimate conversations between a mother and her son. But here's what makes it different from every other scripture you have heard of. The Bhagavatam is not a rule book. It's not a list of commandments. It's not telling you what to believe. It's a story, the greatest story ever told. And it was designed, deliberately, intentionally designed, to transform you just by hearing it. The ancient rishis understood something that modern neuroscience is only now catching up to. Stories rewire the brain. When you hear a story, your nervous system doesn't distinguish between what's happening to the character and what's happening to you. You feel it, you absorb it, you become it. That's why the Bhagavatam exists, not as information, as transmission. So let's go back to that forest, Naimisharanya. It means the forest where the wheel of time stopped. The sages believed this place existed at the edge of time itself, where past, present, and future collapsed into a single point. 88,000 rishis gathered here, not for a weekend retreat. They committed to a 1,000-year yajna, a 1,000-year ceremony of continuous spiritual practice. Think about that. 1,000 years. These weren't casual seekers. These were men who had given up everything: families, kingdoms, wealth, for one pursuit: understanding the nature of reality. And the leader among them was a sage named Saunaka. He stood before the assembly and raised the question that would launch everything. He said, "In this age of confusion, when truth is buried under noise, when people are distracted, exhausted, and spiritually bankrupt, what is the one thing we should hear? What is the essence? If we could only receive one teaching for the rest of time, what should it be?" That's the question. And if you're honest with yourself, it's your question too. Into this gathering walked a man named Sutta Goswami. Now, Sutta wasn't a Brahmin by birth. He wasn't from a prestigious lineage. He was what you'd call an outsider. But he had one thing none of the other sages had. He had sat at the feet of Shukadeva Goswami, the one person who had heard the entire Bhagavatam directly from its source. And this is important. Pay attention to this. The Bhagavatam was not written by a human being. It was compiled by Vyasa, the same sage who compiled the Vedas, who wrote the Mahabharata, who organized the entire body of Vedic knowledge. But after finishing all of that, after writing the greatest works in human history, Vyasa was depressed. He felt empty. Something was missing. He had organized all the knowledge in the universe, and he still felt incomplete. His guru, Narada Muni, came to him and said, "You've written about dharma, about duty, about society, about war, but you haven't written about love. You haven't written about the relationship between the soul and the divine. That's why you feel empty." And so Vyasa sat down and wrote the Bhagavatam, his final work, his masterpiece, the one text he wrote not from obligation, but from the heart. Now let me bring this to you right now. Today, you consume content every single day, hours of it: reels, podcasts, tweets, videos, news, opinions. Your mind is being fed constantly. But here's the question the sages asked, and it's the same question you need to ask. What are you actually filling yourself with? Because content is not neutral. Every story you absorb shapes you. Every video you watch rewires a neural pathway. Every piece of information you consume becomes part of your operating system. The sages at Naimisharanya understood this. They knew that in the age that was coming, our age, Kali Yuga, the age of confusion, people would be drowning in information but starving for wisdom. They'd have access to everything and understand nothing. So they asked for the essence, the one story that contains everything else, the one narrative that, if you absorbed it fully, would transform your entire being. That's the Bhagavatam. It's not competing with your Netflix queue. It's operating on a completely different level. This is a text that was designed to upgrade your consciousness, not just inform your mind. There's one more thing about this opening scene that most people miss. The sages didn't read the Bhagavatam alone. They didn't download it and listen to it on their commute. They gathered, together, in person, around a fire. This is called satsanga, the association of truth seekers. And the Bhagavatam itself says this is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Why? Because transformation is not a solo project. You can read every book. You can watch every video. You can meditate alone in your room for years. But there is something that happens when truth seekers sit together, when people who are genuinely hungry for understanding come into the same space. That cannot happen alone. The field changes, the questions deepen, the answers land differently. The sages knew this. That's why they gathered, not because they were weak, because they understood that the highest truths can only be transmitted in relationship. If you're watching this alone right now, that's fine. But know this, the Bhagavatam is inviting you into a gathering, not just to consume information, but to sit around a fire with seekers who came before you and absorb what they discovered. Over the next 50 episodes, we're going to walk through the entire Bhagavatam, every canto, every major story. You'll hear about Prahlad, the 5-year-old who stood up to the most powerful demon in the universe and won through devotion alone. You'll witness the churning of the cosmic ocean, where gods and demons had to work together, and poison came before nectar. You'll sit with Krishna as he speaks his final words to his closest friend, a conversation most people have never heard of, even more profound than the Bhagavad Gita. And you'll hear the prophecies of Kali Yuga, descriptions written 5,000 years ago that describe our world right now with disturbing accuracy. Every episode connects the ancient to the modern. Every story has a direct application to your life, your relationships, your work, your inner world. This is not history, this is a mirror. So here we are, at the beginning, 88,000 sages, one question, one storyteller, and a text that has survived 5,000 years because it carries something that doesn't expire. The Bhagavatam starts with a simple invitation. Sit down, be still, listen, not to be told what to think, but to hear a story so vast, so deep, so precisely crafted, that by the time you reach the end, you won't be the same person who started. This is episode 1, the greatest story ever told begins.